our love and congratulations to you today on 20 years at Rock Church. What an amazing accomplishment for the glory of God. Know that we're cheering you on this next 10 years, and we celebrate with you of all that the Lord is going to do, because we believe the best is yet to come.
Yes, the best is yet to come. I'm excited to be here. If you don't know me, my name is Pastor Payton. I get the honor and the privilege of serving with our next generation here at Rock Church. If you ever have any questions about Next Gen, about kids ministry, student ministry, you can find me. You can also find somebody with like a Circle Rock Kids logo t-shirt. You're like, why are they wearing that t-shirt today? Well, they wear it because they love kids and they serve here. So today, I'm so excited. I'm so honored to be able to preach to you guys today. Pastor Angelo and Kimmy are not here. They are preaching at another church. But can we honor them this morning? Can we thank them for 20 years of service? Man, we can't get enough of that. And my wife also is not able to be in here today because she is serving with our kids this morning. So can we give it up for her too? I'm going to make her watch the live stream after. But hey, in talking about the 20th anniversary, just like Jake said after worship, wasn't that the best service ever? Wasn't it the best? My opinion, you can debate with me after service. I'll be in the comments, okay? I think for as long as we've been here, that was the best service on Sunday I've ever attended in my life. I don't know. You can disagree with me. If you weren't here, it's okay. We've got 25 years coming up here in 5 years, so we'll see you in 5 years. But man, it was so good. From the Joyful, Joyful number, where you guys all thought it was gonna be a choir song, and it turned into a dance routine, and there were flips and craziness. I declined to be on that team, by the way. From the Joyful, Joyful number, to the food trucks, to Pastor Cal's message, to the videos, the worship medley that got me in tears. What an incredible way to honor 20 years of ministry here at Rock Church. If you missed it, man, tune in online. Go see what God did in and through us that service. And I'm reminiscing on past things, and it got me thinking, 20 years ago, there were probably things that were the best. If I had to go back and remember all the things that were the best at that analogy, I bet you I would find some really cool things. One of them, I was thinking about technology when I was preparing my message. I was thinking about how flip phones were the best. I loved my flip phone. It's funny because I loved it so much because when I was a kid, my elementary school was in my backyard basically, and so I had to walk to school, and I begged my mom. I was like, Mom, please, just give me a flip phone. And she did not off the bat. We actually got little walkie-talkies that we had to use when we walked to school. So I'd walk to school, and then I'd like pull out this massive bulky walkie-talkie and then be like, hey Mom, I'm here. And then turn it off so she can't respond to me because it's embarrassing. She's like, I love you so much. Okay, bye. So walkie-talkies were not the best, but cell phones were the best. And now we're on iPhone like 5,877, and those are the best, right? The iPhone 14 just came out, and the features that has compared to what a flip phone had are way better. But at the time, a flip phone was the best. I also think about style. And style, back then, 20 years ago when the church started, was the best. The turtlenecks and the baggy jeans and everything, it was a whole vibe. And now we've got skinny jeans, we got Crocs back in style now, we've got jean jackets. I heard jean on jean is back now. I guess that's a thing. Style, I reflect on it, and man, turtlenecks were the best, but now this is the best. And it got me thinking even further, okay, aside from societal norms, right? What was the best in my life? And it got me thinking about 20 years ago, I got a cat. And I had that cat for 18 years. His name was Biscuit. He's on the left if you're watching. He was the best, even though he bit me every single time and didn't do anything. He was awesome. Where are my cat owners at out there? Yeah, cats. And recently, my wife and I, we've been married a year now, and we decided it's time to start a family. So we got a cat. We adopted a cat. His name's Willie. He is a certified psychopath. He's insane. He was just keeping me up. I didn't tell first service this. He kept me up till he woke me up at like 4 a.m. last night, just being crazy. So that was the best. And now the best is Willie, our new cat, right? I think about style for me. Man, I had the best style when I was in middle school. The long hair, the glasses, my style was impeccable as a middle schooler. At that time, Harry Potter was just coming out, so I looked just like Harry Potter, right? When I say the word the best, I bet you I know where everybody's mind went. If you've been in church for a long time, maybe if you haven't been, I bet your mind went to the phrase, the best is yet to come. I love that phrase. That's a good phrase. It's a good phrase. But I feel like sometimes it's overused. I feel like we use it a lot. Can I change it on you this morning? What if I said this? Instead of the best is yet to come, what if I said, if you give your best today, you can help others achieve their best tomorrow? See, I think that we get so focused on the best being tomorrow and the best is to come, and I think we forget to give our best today when we do that. It's interesting. So when I talk about the best, when I talk about the future, when I talk about tomorrow, I have a sense that I know, I think I know where some of your brains went. I think some of you in the room went straight to fear, and you're like, oh my goodness, you're talking about tomorrow, talking about the future. I'm afraid of the unknown. I'm afraid of loss. Man, COVID did a number on me. It built up this fear inside of me, fear of not knowing if you're gonna be good enough in the future, if you're gonna be used in the future. I think some people in the room, maybe fear isn't your thing, but frustration is definitely your thing. You get frustrated thinking about the future, thinking, man, I am working hard to make sure my society, my community, my family is well maintained for, but this next generation, man, they can't get it through their heads that they don't have it right. They have a lack of truth. Listen, I know that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the newest generation, they might be world changers, but there's a serious lack of truth in our next generation today. You get frustrated thinking about the future. I think some of you in the room, maybe I stereotype too harshly. Maybe you get really excited when it comes to thinking about tomorrow, when it comes to thinking about the best things in the future, right? You think knowing, I believe in this generation, I know that this next generation is going to go forward and do great things. I love advancement. I love not having to dial on my flip phone 3 times on the same number in order to type a letter. I love being able to talk to my phone and it texts. I love the future. But maybe some of us can't keep up when we think about the future. Like, how in the world am I supposed to think about tomorrow when I have no idea what I'm doing for lunch today? And it's exhausting to think about that, right? And we stay on autopilot and we coast and we keep going and we keep going and we keep going, but we get scared because we can't keep up with the future. Now, what if we brought our best to Rock Church? What would that look like? I know most of us really enjoyed the 20th anniversary, but let's be honest for a second. Sometimes I think we get caught up in how amazing an event was, and we forget about how amazing things in the future can be. Special trips, special events, special moments we have with people, right? And we go, that was the best. At the 20th anniversary, I believe that we gave our best and everybody in the room felt it. I don't think we could probably sustain doing that every single Sunday, but what if, whatever we did, we brought the mentality that I'm gonna do my best today, this Sunday, every Sunday, that mentality of being the best. Here's my big question. If we gave it, what would begin to happen in our church if we gave God our best every single Sunday? Our best worship, our best serving, maybe even our best giving. What would that change about the next 20 years of Rock Church's reaching, raising, releasing? Pastor Steve said it, right? We're unapologetic about these things. What would that change if we gave our best every single Sunday? In the last 20 years, I think this is so important. I heard this common theme throughout the whole anniversary last week, is that the church was built on values, the church was built on character. So I want to define character for you today. I believe character is this, just like it says on our wall out there. Character is we pursue integrity over the platform. It's we choose to have integrity every single day, every single step for the next 20 years so that we can help reach a lost generation. And I believe that that's gonna be the key, guys. If we hold fast to integrity, I believe that the best will come with the next generation. Because we live in a world where there is a distracted generation. I believe this. The noise of social media is so loud. The noise of opinions, of streaming services that you can click and see right away and fill time and fill your brain, the noise is so loud. They're drowned out by clicks. They're drowned out by opinions. Man, this is a distracted generation. They're caught up in attention, in relationships, and thinking that if I'm noticed, then that's all that matters in my life. And students and kids in the next generation are stuck in the darkness of high school. I'm gonna say this too, stuck in the darkness of middle school. And I'm gonna say this too, stuck in the darkness of elementary school. Guys, the schools, there's so much lost people in the schools. The darkness is there, right? The darkness of the internet. And we live in a distracted generation. Listen, these past 20 years, I've noticed something. The newer generations, the younger generations, a lot of them start to think in this idea now of this is my story and I'm the main character in my story. I don't think everybody always thought that. But what if we thought about it this way? If you were a part of Rock Church in the last 20 years, you were a main character, a main contributor in the story of what Jesus has done in Rock Church. What if we began to champion the next generation to be the main characters, even if it meant we were the side characters of this next 20 years of Rock Church? What would that do if we laid aside ourselves and said, I'm going to champion this generation that's a distracted generation for the next 20 years of Rock Church? If you're with me today, I want you to open your Bibles, if you've got them with you, to 2 Samuel chapter 24. We'll get there in a little bit. Verse 18, I'm not gonna read the whole chapter of this story, but if you wanna go home with your kids today, or go home, or go to Jillian's story, wanna go and open up your Bible and read the story. I believe it's a very impactful story. We'll get there in a little bit. Before we get there, I wanna share a personal story. Has anybody ever felt guilty of something the minute that they made a mistake? You know you did wrong. Let's be honest in the room. Come on. I know there's more out there. I had a moment like that not too long ago, about a year ago. I had a moment like this. In 2021, it was the best year of my life, but it was also the most stressful year of my life. Some of you may know I've been married for a year now, which is crazy. It's awesome. The marriage life is so much better than the wedding prep life. But I lived in that wedding prep life because I got engaged and married last year. And so, everybody go, take a picture. This is the best picture I could have chosen of our engagement pictures. And so all the ladies in the room, you know this, okay? So I don't have to explain this to you, but guys, listen up. Especially if you're not dating or married, I need you to listen because this is super important. When you're planning a wedding, when you're doing things for a wedding, it is not the day that he dreamed of, okay? It is the day that she dreamed of, okay? So your opinions must go to the side. So what you do, everything needs to be geared towards her, right? And one of the most important days is leading up to the wedding is the bridal shower, okay? I didn't know what a bridal shower consisted of. I had no idea. And so what did we do? I knew going into this, okay, I'm gonna do exactly what my wife or wife-to-be wants to do for this bridal shower. I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna make sure it happens, I'm gonna get it done, I'm gonna get out of there before I get destroyed by 100 women that were in that room, okay? So we do the bridal shower here at the church, and we're setting up for the bridal shower. And in one of the rooms, there's this long cable that's coming from the ceiling. If you know anything about ceiling tiles, you ceiling tile experts out there, that if you have something coming out of the ceiling tile and the ceiling tile is pressed up against that with a little frame around it, then it's gonna get stuck in there. And so what I had to do is I had to go up on a ladder, I had to wrap up this cable to put in the ceiling because it looked really tacky for the bridal shower. And we're not gonna have tacky, we're gonna have our best thing for the bridal shower, okay? So what I did is I wrapped this cable. I'm pretty good at wrapping cables. And then I walk up the ladder and I start pushing on this ceiling tile. And as I'm pushing, it's kind of stuck. I can't really get it. And I have like multiple people coming up to me going, hey, if you keep you're gonna break it. You don't wanna break it. You gotta push it from the outside. So I was like, all right. So I tried pushing it from the outside. Still couldn't get it to budge without like it bending or whatever. And so people kept coming up to me and I'm trying to figure this out. I'm like, I wanna make this day the best. So people came, gave me their opinions. I said, thank you so much. I proceeded to push on the ceiling tile until the ceiling tile split in half. So what did I do? I took the cable, I put it right up there. I was like, I know I messed up. But the best thing about this story is that I went to Pastor Angelo's house the minute that bridal shower ended. And I repented and I said, I'm sorry. I'm ashamed to be on your staff here at Rock Church. Will you forgive me? Close together. The cool thing about ceiling tiles is if you take two parts of a ceiling tile and you move them really close together, it looks like it never broke in the first place. So I did that, and I was like, oh, that looks great, and I walked away. But I knew, I was like, I'll come back to it. After the wedding's done, I'll come back and I'll fix it. Fast forward, 2022 hits. I'm in the office, I think, of Pastor Angelo. I'm talking to a bunch of different pastors, and I start to overhear in conversation, can you believe that somebody broke a ceiling tile and they didn't even tell anybody about it? And in that moment, I had two choices. I had one to go, oh, how horrible if a person would do that. But I chose the second one, and I repented and said, I am so, so sorry. Now listen, in that moment, I know I was ignorant. In that moment, I was focused on only the thing ahead of me, and I cut a corner, and I did something I probably shouldn't have done for the sake of getting it done. And in my ignorance, I'm reminded of a story about a famous leader in the Bible named King David. A lot of you know King David, okay? Whether you're churched or unchurched, we know the story of David and Goliath and how David was this little boy who beat this giant guy. And it was a great story, right? He's an awesome guy. And we saw moments where Saul, the former king, was trying to kill David because David was going to be the up-and-coming king, and he was jealous. And David had this awesome upbringing story. Now, check this out. Near the end of his rule, near the end of his reign as king, David actually made a big mistake. And a lot of us don't even know about this story. King David ordered a census that was ill-advised that ended up causing a plague to all his people on Israel. In issuing the census, apparently, as I'm reading this, I'm like, why is David feeling so guilty right away? Apparently, he knew that he disregarded what God had told Moses for census taking and what he was supposed to do back in Exodus chapter 30. And as soon as David takes a census, he doesn't do it the right way. He cut a corner. What happens? God says, David repents and says, God, I'm sorry. And God says, okay, well now there's one of three punishments that you get to choose that is gonna come over your land and over your people. Punishment number one, he could choose 3 years of famine. Punishment number two, 3 months of war. Or punishment number three, 3 days of plague. So I think like most of us probably would have picked 3 days of plague. He also picked 3 days of plague. The crazy thing is that when he chose that 3 days of plague, 70,000 Israelites died as a result of that plague. So David, what did he do? He did something ill-advised. He shouldn't have done it. He felt guilty right away. There was a punishment because of it, and 70,000 people were affected. And this plague is ravaging, and it's going, and it stops right before it hits Jerusalem. But God commanded, check this out, God did it to stop at the threshing floor belonging to Araunah the Jebusite. Turn to your neighbor, say Araunah. Araunah. A character we probably have never heard, a character we probably cannot pronounce his name. For the sake of pronouncing his name today, we're gonna call him Ronnie, okay? So Araunah. See, I can't even say Ronnie right, Ronnie. We're gonna call him Ronnie, the Jebusite. And this is where our story picks up. So fast forward, 2 Samuel chapter 24, verse 18 says this. Gad came to David that day and said to him, go up and set up an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Ronnie the Jebusite. David went up in obedience to God's command, just as the Lord had command it. Check this out. If you already made a mistake, if you know you're already in deep water with God, it's probably good that you are obedient to his next word that he's asking you to do. That's so important. Check that out. He knew in that moment, I made a mistake. I did something wrong. It's time for me to move forward. Picks up in the next verse. It says this. Ronnie looked down and he saw the king and his servants coming toward him. So he went out and paid homage to the king with his face to the ground. Next verse says this. It says, Ronnie said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? David replied, to buy the threshing floor from you in order to build an altar to the Lord, so the plague of the people may be halted. And Ronnie said to David, check this out. My lord the king may take whatever he wants and offer it. Here are the oxen for the burnt offering and the threshing sledges and the ox yokes for the wood. Your majesty, Ronnie gives everything here to the king. Then he said to the king, may the Lord your God accept you. I love focusing on Arana in this moment in scripture because it's a man who had no agenda, who had the king coming to him, and he obeyed him right away. And not only did he obey him, he said this. He said, take anything you want, take it for free. And as much as I would love to expound on the principles of obedience and generosity today, I think it's time we not only talk about the giving your best from the point of Arana, but I also want to talk about David's areas of lacking integrity. Listen, I'm not here to condemn people today. I'm not here to call you out. If you know that these are some areas in your life you're struggling through, today I think we can get a really good picture of what it looks like to live with integrity if we look at 3 of the areas where David lacked integrity. I think it's so important to know that even though you might have a great upcoming and great rise in your life, that there are still areas of integrity that you always have to work on. So let's define 3 of these things this morning. If you're taking notes, number 1 is this. Number one area where David lacked integrity, David fed his own ego. How many people in here are prideful? I'm just kidding. Listen, I'm reading through this. I think it's so important that we recognize where David was prideful. As I'm reading through this story, I go, well, all he did was count a census. Check this out. It wasn't the fact that he counted the census. It's the fact that his pride got in the way to say, I could do this better than God. I think it's so important to notice that, is that I know it was supposed to be this way, God, but I'm going to put this in my own hands. Some people speculate that David actually was counting it his own way to build an army for his liking so that he could conquest and rule over parts of the world, feeding his own ego. How often do we do this? Where we go, well, God, I know you want me to do this, or this wise person's coming to speak in my life. Instead, I think this is best for me, right? How often do we do that? It's not necessarily, I don't really define pride and ego just by looking out for yourself, but I also believe that it's not putting yourself first in situations. How about when we're in an uncomfortable situation, when we know what we're supposed to do is right, but we choose to do something else because it's more comfortable? I think some areas that it looks like this is not setting yourself up to have accountability in your life, isolating yourself. I think sometimes that can lead to pride and ego. Questions like, what would blank or this person say if I made this decision, not regarding those questions in your life? It's not on the screen, but Proverbs 16:18, the first half of this verse, I love this verse because it's so true. It says, pride goes before destruction. Pride will get in the way of your influence and cause you to not have a future because it destroys it. In the areas where prideful, guys, listen, just like Dave was prideful on this, it's going to destroy something. It's going to have some major consequences. We've got to have people in our lives that can speak into our lives. David, he fed his own ego. He didn't listen to anybody, and he fed his own ego. Number 2, another area where David lacked integrity is this. David cut corners. David cut corners. All he had to do was just a little bit more work to go, you know what? I'm going to do this census the right way. But instead he chose, I'm going to do it the easy way, the way that I want to do it. How many things are we doing in our lives halfway because we make excuses? How many times do we look at our lives and go, in our work, in our job, maybe at home, at school, well, I'll get to it later. Oh, well, I'll do it this way. Oh, I don't want to listen. David cut corners. I think about serving in the church and how we have such an opportunity to make the most of every situation, but how easily we can just cut corners and do things halfway. And I believe that these first 2 points, cutting corners and feeding our own ego, have killed this next generation. Have killed it. In an era where people can make content and do things at a much larger scale than we could 10, 20, 30 years ago, when you see one person acting prideful or one person cutting corners, oh, it's good. But now we're starting to see a full generations of not doing things the right way. It's going to have side effects, and we have to be careful of those things. I believe that if we're going to really, truly give our best, we have to choose to not cut corners. We've got to do things the right way and not do things in maintenance mode. Don't cut corners. Don't cut corners. David cut corners, and it cost him. And third thing is this, and this one's obvious. David made a questionable decision. David made a questionable decision. Doesn't this sound familiar? Didn't David just do this 10, 12 chapters earlier when he had his affair with Bathsheba? Yeah, we all know that story, right? David saw Bathsheba bathing, and he decided to go after what felt right in the moment instead of the things that God had prepared him for and the things that God had planned for him. And in a moment, there was a pattern in his life that he decided to go back to and make questionable decisions over and over again, to the point where it cost him 70,000 of his people. It's not the first time he made a decision that cost him a lot. What questionable decisions are we making that we're continuing to make even though we know we shouldn't be making those decisions? Man, are we coming back to that over and over again, being held up in the same pattern that we shouldn't be held up in? Man, I think about in today, if you keep up a little bit with like the church world around the country, we are constantly seeing pastors, celebrity pastors, falling like crazy. I feel like every day I'll look online and I'll see another celebrity pastor that made a huge questionable decision. And it makes me go, man, I gotta start really having accountability. I gotta really make sure that my integrity is here. It can't be a number 2 or number 3 thing. It's gotta be number 1, right? Because the minute I let my integrity go and I start to make questionable decisions, it can have massive, massive impact. And you see that with churches all over the place now, and it's scary. So me aside, are there areas in your life that you need to clean up so you don't go back to making questionable decisions? 3 areas where David lacked integrity. He fed his own ego, he cut corners, and David made a questionable decision. But I love this. This isn't where the story ends. I really want to land on this verse as we get close to wrapping up this morning in verse 24, where the story continues. And remember, this is where David was offered freely all the land, everything from Araunah. And he could have chosen to go, all right, sweet, I'm going to take this, thanks so much, see you later. And I'll do what I need to do, get it done. But check out what the king of Israel, the king who had dominance over everything, check out what he did. The king answered Araunah, no, I insist on buying it from you for a price. Check this out. For I will not offer to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. Cost me nothing. I will not offer the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. In a moment where the king had another opportunity to cut a corner and do things the wrong way, he said, I'm going to own up to my mistakes. I'm going to go after God and give a sacrifice that costs me something. Let me ask you this. What offerings are costing you something? Are there areas where we're going, oh, okay, it's time to tithe. I got like $1, I guess. I could give in the offering bucket, right? Does that cost you something? There's an area in your life that you're sacrificing, you're laying down, you're spending time with your family, and it's costing you something that you couldn't have somewhere else? No, I insist on buying it from you for a price. For I will not offer to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So what did David do? David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 20 ounces of silver. And he built an altar to the Lord there and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Lord was receptive to prayer for the land, and the plague in Israel ended. Now check this out. David may have lacked some serious major integrity, but I believe that it's so important to note the 3 areas of lacking integrity so that we can see 3 areas where David was redeemed in that moment, because I don't think we're far off from David. It's so easy. I think that if we didn't see the flaws of David's life, we would think David's a perfect person that we can never attain. And we might never get to the status where David was. But it's so important for us to note this, is that when we see the imperfections next to the perfections and the things that he did better, we get to see how we can do that in our lives today. So 3 areas where he improved his integrity. Number 1 is this: David repented. David repented. What did David do? He made a 180 turn from where he was to where he wanted to go. He immediately said, I'm sorry, God. I know I messed up and I know I made a mistake. And it looks like he meant it. You see, burnt offerings are sacrifices that people made in the Old Testament to make wrong things with God, right things with God. And he made that sacrifice. He repented and he acted on it and went after that in his life. The good news is that David had an ounce of integrity and felt guilty the minute that you can read it, the second that he finished numbering the people. Does it mean he's perfect? No, nobody's perfect. But it does mean that he's working towards his relationship with God. I want to go on a side tangent here. I think it's so important that we note this. I believe that we as a church have got to stop judging people and putting people in a box that have made mistakes. Because think about how important it is that David made a mistake that led to 70,000 people dying from a plague. That's a big mistake. I would have a hard time forgiving that person. But are there people in your life that you're not giving your best to because they made a mistake? And they repented and they asked for forgiveness, but you're still holding on to that thing because it hurts so bad. David repented. We've got to stop being people that don't let go of people's shortcomings, even though they've moved forward with those things. Because why? They're trying to get to their best, and we want to get to our best. Number 4, David repented. Number 5, David redeemed himself by spending time with God. He knew that he had to get right with God. He knew it almost instantaneously that the man after God's own heart had to get right with God. And I believe that this one was probably preceded up to this story. But if David didn't spend time with God in prayer, with time with God in humility, I don't think he would have gotten to this point where he made a wrong thing right in his life. I'm telling you that when you begin to see new revelations of God's heart and you come closer to him, and coming closer to him can help you make the right decisions to really bring your best today. That even when your hand's in the cookie jar and you're about to take the cookie, and you know you shouldn't take the cookie, but you really want the cookie, you'll know that, hey, I spent time with God, and I just remember this is a mistake I made last time. I don't want to go back to that same mistake. I wasn't going to share this, but I decided to do it first service. I listened to this song this past week. It's a little bit newer of a song. It's called Monday Morning Faith by SEU Worship. And I was listening to it, and it gave such a good picture of if we just spend time with God, man, how much greater our influence and our impact's going to be. It says this. It says, hell's not scared of a Sunday faith if it only leads to an empty praise. What really makes darkness run is when saints arise in praise and quiet. What are we doing that is leading to empty praise? Or are we really spending time with God in the areas that we really need to spend time with God? Because remember, we're not just talking about having integrity in general for no impact. We're talking about having integrity so that we can really get to our best and the best that God has for us today, right? So think through the lens of a Sunday. On a Sunday morning, what are we doing to really give God our best? Are we worshiping him with everything we've got? Are we giving with everything we've got because of that time spent with Jesus? 3 areas where he had some major integrity He repented, he spent time with God, and David led other people with his best. Oh, this is so important. The 5 points I just shared were solely on David, and maybe David and God's relationship too. But this last one, it's with David and other people. Because David very easily could have went, I'm going to go make this wrong thing right, but I'm not going to post it on social media or bring anybody with me, so I'm going to go and make this wrong thing right and do it. No, instead, check out what it says. We read this already in verse 20. It said, Ronnie looked down, and he saw the king and with his face coming toward him. So he went out and paid homage to the king with his face to the ground. I believe that this verse right here is monumental to David moving forward. And I think that there's probably some servants that went, okay, I could see his mistakes. I saw where he didn't lead very well, but I'm going to follow him to make a wrong thing right. And how much greater of an influence and an impact now David has in the lives of those people because he brought them with them to make wrong things right. Are you bringing people with you to show other people your best, even in the midst of mistakes? You know, if you've caught it by now, there's really two parts to this message. The first is a call to action to give God your best every Sunday. In serving, if you don't serve in an area yet, man, I want to encourage you, you got to get plugged in and start serving the body. Amen. If you're not giving right now, I really want to encourage you. God can do great things in and through. He already is in your giving. But if we're not giving our best, what are we doing? I want to challenge us. What if we looked at our message notes every single week and we didn't have any more under budget Sundays? What could God do if we gave our best in our giving, right? And our worship. That as every time we have an altar call, man, we're saying, God, I'm going to give you my best. Even though I might not be struggling through something right now, I'm still going to worship you with my best. I'm going to praise you with my best. I'm going to give you my best. So first is a call to action to give best on every Sunday. And second is to begin to take integrity in your life seriously for the sake of the next generation knowing Christ. I'll prove it to you. I'll prove to you why integrity is so important. So, about a month ago, we meet every Wednesday for our kids' services, K through 5th, and our student services, 6th through 12th grade. And about a month ago, we started a series. It was called How to Friend. And we talked about the good and the bad relationships in your life, and not just like kicking people to the curb and be like, don't be friends with that person. It's more so like, hey, what influences are in your life that maybe you need to put on a pause for right now? And what are the bad influences in your life that maybe are causing you to make bad decisions? And so we put these pieces of paper on the front of the altar, and we put a giant garbage can right in the middle. And we said, hey, some of you, it's time to throw out the garbage in your life that you know you need to throw out. And so it led to two things. It led to people that, man, I know this garbage in this relationship needs to go away. And then the other side was, man, I know that this garbage in my life in general that I need to give away. And listen, I want to share this because I believe that reading through these things, I brought one of our leaders around to read them with me. We were in tears reading these things, knowing that reading these things are knowing what the next generation, this is proof what the next generation is going through, and how our integrity now, whether you're a parent or not, how we handle ourselves on Sundays, whether we are excited to be here or not, has a direct impact on the next generation because they're struggling. They're a distracted generation. Check this out. Some of the things students need to throw away: friends, habits, addictions, attitudes, overthinking, judgment. I need to get rid of some toxic friends, hate, fear of rejection, anger, disrespect, pornography. That one, there was a lot of those. Pornography, these are 6th through 12th graders. I'd be willing to bet that that's probably even younger too. Jealousy, school drama, failing classes, not trying. The impact and the integrity that we have has led to the next generation not trying because there's no purpose, there's no care, not trying. Trust issues, past relationships, bad habits, profanity, my attitude, my anger, And this one, I remember reading this one specifically with one of my leaders going, man, there are students, that they didn't write their names on these. These are anonymous. There are students in here that wrestle and struggle with this stuff, and they know what they struggle with, and they own it, but they don't know how to get out of it. My dad leaving me, my broken family, my pornography addiction. That's just one student. Guys, what are we doing today to bring our best so that this next generation can have a tomorrow? That's right. What are we doing? It's not about getting rid of my behind closed doors problems so that I can be better. It's about getting rid of my behind closed doors problems so that I can be better, so that I can make people better. So that I can help other people move forward in the relationship with Christ. Because there's lost people here. They're lost, they're a distracted generation. You know how I bring my best? I bring my best every single week because I see kids walk in those doors knowing that there's brokenness, that there's hurt, that there's pain, and we need to help that because we have the answer. I have like maybe 2-3 leaders right now that are specifically pouring into one kid. We had this kid, I invited him to come today. I don't know if he's here today, but I invited him to come to service. And a couple of months ago, he started coming just kind of off to himself and didn't really get to look him in the eyes and whatever, things like that. Don't know how he came, but like every single week he's been coming back. Every single week. And then I have one leader that said I went and sat with him and had a conversation and gave him a Bible. And then he brought his Bible back the next week. I talked to another leader. The other leader said in small groups, this guy opened up, and he was the only person that opened up in small groups, to the point where this past Wednesday, this student gave their life to Jesus for the first time ever because somebody decided to give their best, because leaders showed up and gave their best. Are we giving our best today? Did you show up with the attitude of having your best today? Or did we show up today going, I'm just gonna go with the status quo and be in maintenance mode? Because there's a distracted generation that needs our best. They need it. Church, will you stand with me? What are we doing in our lives, behind the scenes, in front of the camera, where we need to give our best? Where we've been the main character and they've been watching and you need to start giving your best. What are we doing? Here's the best part of this story. I didn't tell you about this, how this Bible story makes a huge impact in the kingdom. Check this out. The land that King David bought and he obediently went after became the site, the very same site where the temple of Jerusalem was built years later. No idea that was gonna happen. But check this out, 2 Chronicles says this. If you know anything about Bible history, you'll know that David's son was Solomon. And it says in 2 Chronicles 3:1, it says, Solomon began building the temple where the Lord had appeared to his father. You can get the next generation's ear. You can get the next generation's heart. You can get the next generation's sacrifice. You can get the next generation's service. You can get the next generation's best if you start today by giving God your best. It not only was a future generation thing, but it was David's own son that said, I saw my dad give my best, so I'm going to choose to give God the very best. A lot of people know this, but David wanted to be the one to build the temple. David wanted to go after great things. David wanted to do big things, and he did. But because he chose to repent and give his best and not serve himself and say, sorry, God, I'm going to now choose to give my best so that the next generation can be better than me. Are we giving our best? What's it gonna take for you to give your best on Sundays? Really think about that question in your heart. I think there's so many people in here that I can pick out people right now that if it weren't for you, we could not do what we do on a Sunday. But it's time to rise up. It's time to say, I'm not settling anymore. I'm not rolling out of bed and then rolling into church. I'm not gonna give my worst. I'm not gonna give a small offering. I'm gonna give my best offering. I'm gonna give Jesus everything. Can we close our eyes all around this room? I want to be transparent. I know some Sundays I don't give my best, okay? I know that in announcements, in junior high service, there are times where I don't want to give my best. And I know that sometimes I don't do that. But today I'm making a commitment to give my best on Sundays. And that's just one step. That's one step. I'm not saying on your Mondays. I'm not saying that'll come. I'm not saying in your small group, that'll come. I'm not saying all I'm saying is if we'll just do one day, Sundays, give our best, giving, worship, service, what will begin to happen? So eyes closed all around this place. If you can admit in here, God, I have not given you my best. God, I have shortchanged my relationship with you. I have had opportunities that I've missed because I've decided to roll in and not care. Maybe because I'm hurt, maybe because I got baggage, maybe because I'm hiding things behind the scenes. If that's you and you say, today I'm committing to give my best on Sundays for Jesus, will you just lift your hand up if that's you? Yeah, there's hands everywhere. Yeah. Best, my best. God, that means something. You can put your hands down. Everybody look at me. I just had this thought that when we give our best, it's gonna cost us a lot. It is. I can think of, I can think of times where my wife and I, this past couple months, and life has been so hard. It's been so hard. But I come in on a Wednesday, I come in on a Sunday, and I look people in the eyes and go, that is the reason I'm here. That is the reason I give my best. That is the reason I stayed in the office until 7 o'clock that night. It's because I want to develop something. I want to do something new and creative so that this can happen. So that we can see this happen more and more and more. And you know what I want to start to see? I don't want to just see problems written on pieces of paper, because there were a lot of people in that room that night, but I counted 50 pieces of paper from that night. But I don't want to just do it so I can see another thing, profanity, another thing here, another thing, lust, another thing, trust, another thing on here, addiction, anger. I don't want to just keep seeing these things. I want to see solutions. I want to see how are we getting better. I want to see what is this next generation doing with the relationship with God. That's what I want to see. And it's going to cause us to have sacrifices. It's our time. It's our relationship. Some of you in here have great families, and I'm not saying discount your families, but sometimes we do have to make those sacrifices in our families so that people can know Christ. We've got to. I'm going to pray. I'm going to leave it super open-ended, but I'm going to pray. And if you raise your hand, or maybe you didn't raise your hand, but you feel it in your heart right now, and you're going, I got to give God my best. I got to give God my best. These altars are going to be open. If one of those areas, let's focus on 3 areas: worship, giving, and serving. If one of those areas is worship, I want to challenge you to come down to the front and just worship. Go after God. If it's giving, today might be your day. Just start giving. Just start today. And maybe serving, if you want to get plugged in somewhere, you're like, it's time for me to get plugged in. Find me, find a pastor, find somebody. We've got cards on the Welcome Center out there that you can get plugged in to serve. Start today. But if we give our best today on Sundays, we'll see the best tomorrow. Let's pray. God, we thank you for what you're doing. God, I just feel in this room just pain. I just feel like there's people in here that are struggling, that don't know where to turn, that don't know where to go, and they need you. And they can't even think about giving their best because what am I right now, God? Like, what do I have to offer? But today, if we would just say, whether it's small or big, we just offer our best today. I pray that you would come through in a mighty, mighty way. I thank you, God, for the offerings of the best that were given throughout the Bible. I thank you for Abel giving his best, giving his first. I thank you for Abraham for going to want to sacrifice his son for you. I pray that, God, you, Jesus, when you gave your best by dying on a cross for us. I pray that, God, you would help us see our potential and see that we can give our best to you. Move in people's hearts today. We love you. We thank you in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen.